Because it was invasive. Now understand, and I mentioned this in terms of breathalyzers. A breathalyzer
isn't
you
invasive.
breathe in, you breathe out. That's not invasive. A blood test is done so often, you technically are breaking the skin, but that's such a routine procedure, that's not really that invasive. But if they've got a cut to get into you, like removing that bullet, oh no, that's not invasive. What was the other invasive search that I'd given you? Go ahead, Nazim.
The man that ran, swallowed all the pills as soon as the police got there.
Okay, the police had a valid warrant to go in said man's house. They had a valid warrant, they knocked on the door, he didn't answer, but the door was open, so they went inside, announcing their presence, flashing their warrant. All of this was perfectly legal until they got back to that back bedroom. Knocked on the door, heard some noise in there, opened the door with the warrant in hand, and said man jumped up. What did they have a warrant for, do you remember?
It was morphine.
Yeah, it was. The guy was basically selling, and morphine was one of the things that they were authorized to search for. So dude leapt from his bed, ran over to a table, grabbed a handful of pills, and swallowed them. What did the police do, do you remember?
Yeah, they took him to the hospital.
And?
Made him throw up
Stomach pump.
They got his stomach pumped, which effectively made him throw up. And what did he throw up?
the morphine.
The very morphine that was in the warrant. Okay, was this legal?
No.
No.
Why?
Because the fact he would swallowing it would not be life-threatening, and they didn't know that.
Well, no, just stop. He didn't say that. Go ahead, Andrew.
The warrant wasn't for inside him, it was for his house.
It's
The warrant was
invasive.
for his house. Go ahead and tell me more, somebody.
It's invasive.
They ruled that this was an invasive search. Okay, what could the police have said that maybe would have made this legal?
That they were doing it for his own life and safety.
We're not doing this to collect evidence. We're doing this to save his life. If they would have said that, maybe it would have worked. But they didn't say that. They said they were going in there, and this was like 40, 50 years ago. So when you swallow pills, it got into your system. You basically lose the evidence if they stay in there that long. So they pumped his stomach immediately, found the very drugs that they had the warrant for, and then they're like, okay, we're going to convict you. And the Supreme Court said no, and this was Justice, do you remember his name? No.
That wouldn't be him.
Frankfurter. Justice Frankfurter said, this decision shocks my conscience. The idea that you could take a man out of his home and make him vomit against his will in order to get evidence to use to convict him violates natural law. This is basically defaming, or this is basically debasing human dignity by forcing somebody, extracting them from their home, and then extracting evidence from their body in an invasive way by going into their stomach. Go ahead.
So I thought of a random question. So, like, could someone say, hey, go give us a pee sample? Would that be legal?
That also is not an invasive search.
Well, I mean, like, if they tell you that you have to go pee now,
okay,
rather
now
than just
remember,
pee when you naturally pee.
Remember the thing that I said on this, okay?
Naturally
and I
functions.
said on this, volunteering evidence.
You're volunteering when you pee?
Well, go ahead, Luis.
No, what about like at the airports? Like if they have cocaine in them or something. Like, you know how people would like swallow it?
Yeah. Okay, the trick was something like that. Again, it goes back down to volunteering of the evidence. They're not necessarily going to go and pump your stomach, but what is it that everybody's got to do every couple of days?
You gotta sit around.
You're going to have, did you say you're going to have to sit around?
Yeah, you gotta wait until you go.
Well, that's the thing. If you voluntarily provide that evidence one way or the other way, well, they're not doing any invasive searching. They're not doing anything illegal.
So they have to wait for you to go?
Yeah,
They can't
and
tell you go
volunteer
now?
it.
So they hold you.
Well, they would hold you, and then sooner or later you're going to go, and they're going to be watching. And as soon as you go, bam, now they have you. And see, when you think about it, and again, one way or the other, if you volunteer it, it's perfectly legal for them to get that evidence. It's not invasive. But I believe we had used the police training day?
No, we use Junk Drive.
What was the movie with Denzel and
Huh?
Training Day, the cop day, where they made the guy vomit by sticking the pen down his throat? That at that point is forcing somebody. That's not volunteering. But if they vomit without the police trying to get evidence,
Or if
that's
self-defense,
different.
the policemen are
Self-defense
self-defending.
would be the example.
And then
Go ahead.